The University of Kansas is not exactly known as a football school. No team in Power 5 won less games during the 2010s than the Jayhawks did. And sure, things seem to be on the up and up for Kansas. They're coming off a 9-win season in 2023, entering this year in the preseason top 25. But this program still has a very long ways to go until they become one of the top powers of college football. Welcome everybody to the very first episode of the Kansas Jayhawks Dynasty here on EA College Football 25. It has been 11 years since we've gotten a new college football game, so because of that, I want to make this the deepest, most immersive Dynasty series you'll find here on YouTube. Just to do a little sneak peek of what to expect, we're going to be diving very deep into recruiting, going over film and highlights of some of our top recruiting targets, along with some of the most notable high school games around the state of Kansas. I want to be able to build a connection with these players before they even step foot on our team. We're also going to be following the rest of the college football landscape. We're going to be going over some of the most notable games around the country, especially those in our conference, the Big 12, along with the most notable rivalry games, and following all the best teams and best players so we can watch these guys develop, ultimately crown a national champion, and eventually send these players into the NFL, as these draft classes will carry over to our Madden 25 franchise that will start within the next month or so. For those of you who were around for the NCAA Next Up series a couple years ago, it'll be kind of similar to that, just we're going to be following a team here in Kansas. I want to watch these players go through college and eventually enter the NFL, just as we've done over the past few seasons. I feel like that's really made my Madden franchises exciting, and I'm excited to bring that back once Madden is out next month. So why did I ultimately choose Kansas for the series? This is not a traditional rebuild in the sense that we're picking a low prestige school who isn't very highly rated. That's not the case with Kansas. They're ranked 21 going into the year, and they have a real shot at making the playoffs. This is a good football team, but I think there's a lot of interesting challenges with the Jayhawks. While the opening roster is very good, it's a senior-driven team. Many of these players have helped resurrect the Kansas football program, but they're only going to be here for a year. It'll be a quick turnaround, and we're going to have to utilize recruiting and the transfer portal to keep this team good. Obviously, as I talked about earlier, this is not a very historically good program. Prior to last season, it's been 15 years since Kansas even finished above 500. The last time this team won double-digit games was 2007. I think it's also going to be a major challenge playing in the Big 12, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think it's going to be harder to make the playoff out of the Big 12 than any other conference, and that includes the Big 10 and the SEC. While both of those conferences are more talented, I would expect the Big 10 and the SEC to get at least 3 to 4 teams into the playoff per season. I don't think that's going to be the case with the Big 12. I think if our conference is lucky, we might be able to get 1 or 2 teams in the playoff per year, and I think our conference is also going to get quite a bit better over the next few seasons. Clemson and Florida State have both been heavily linked to joining the Big 12 as recently as this past week. We could also take a look at adding some of the top Group 5 teams as well. From the Americans, somebody like Memphis or Tulane. I think either one of those teams would look to jump into the Power 4. Liberty and Conference USA. Boise State and Colorado State in the Mountain West. They both make a lot of geographical sense. Appalachian State and James Madison in the Sun Belt as well. I think this conference is going to get better and better over the next couple of years, making it harder and harder to make the playoff. There's going to be more margin for error in the SEC and in the Big 10. Teams that might lose 2 to 3 games in those conferences will still have a chance at making the playoff, but that's not going to be the case in the Big 12, which is going to make it really hard to get into the playoff year in and year out. As for our coach, I really want to focus on bringing in talent, whether that's through high school recruiting or through the transfer portal. So I'm going to select the recruiting backstory. That way we'll be able to build up our recruiting tree as quick as possible to try to match the talent level that our roster currently has. As for the newest head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks, I would like to introduce a name that you guys might know if you've been around the channel, Puma Whitlock. He just recently retired from the NFL after a nearly 20-year career as the starting quarterback of the St. Louis Dragons. He won 3 Super Bowls in the NFL and 2 national championships at his alma mater, Ohio State. I don't know which area I'm going to choose as my pipeline yet. I definitely want to focus on in-state recruiting, though. Kansas has had some trouble recruiting in-state over the last couple of years, and I really want to improve that. So here comes Coach Whitlock, 6'5", 219. The aura is guzzling through the screen right now as he signs a 4-year contract to take over as the newest head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks and look to keep this team as one of the powers of college football in, again, what should be a very competitive college football landscape, particularly in the Big 12. Can Puma Whitlock keep this team as one of the better teams in the conference, a feat that obviously this program has had a lot of trouble with over the past 15 years. So let's officially get this started. We're going to be going over a few things today, most notably the roster. I want to meet the team and figure out what we're going to be working with, who are going to be the top players for us this year, and who are some guys to watch out for down the line. Afterwards, we'll talk custom schedules, recruiting, and more. So without further ado, let's meet the 2024 Kansas Jayhawks. And as I talked about earlier, this is a really good team, one of the best in the Big 12. The FPI projection system gives Kansas the highest chance of any team in the conference to make the playoff this year. This is a really good team with a very good group of seniors. These guys have turned around the Kansas program, and I want to send them out right. This should be a really fun season, and our team should win a lot of games and hopefully contend for a spot in the college football playoff. But as I said, we're going to have to focus on recruiting quickly. Wide receiver, for instance, has one non-senior on the roster. So let's start by meeting the two biggest stars of this team out of the backfield at quarterback and running back. Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal have become the faces of this Kansas program, and I think the success of this team lies within these two. Quarterback Jalen Daniels is a dynamic playmaker. At 6 foot, 220 pounds, Daniels is one of the most exciting players in college football. He's got an electric arm, he's dynamic as a runner, and he can make all the throws. Daniels is unquestionably one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country, and I'm very confident he can lead this team far and hopefully set himself up as an NFL prospect to get drafted next year. There's one big question mark, though, with Daniels, and that's health. He's had a lot of trouble staying on the field over these past few seasons. He missed most of last year with an injury, and unfortunately for us, we don't have a guy like Jason Bean behind him again to look to keep this team afloat. Daniels may be ultra talented, but we're going to have to keep him healthy, and we're going to have to watch out with the new wear and tear system. And I think using him as our quarterback in Season 1, we're really going to see how this wear and tear system works given his history of injuries. He only comes in with a 76 injury rating, which is certainly going to be one of the lowest on the team. As good of a player as Daniels is, he hasn't been able to stay on the field in his college career, and we haven't seen him live up to his full potential yet. I think regardless if Daniels is healthy or not, our team is going to lean on running the ball a lot, specifically with Devin Neal, who is without a doubt one of the best running backs in college football. Neal is dynamite. He has a chance to go for the home run every time he touches the ball. He's got 5 abilities, 3 physical, and 2 mental. This is someone who is dynamic, he's shifty out of the backfield, but he can also run with some power as well. He will make the first guy miss consistently, and chances are your favorite defensive player will not be beating him in a foot race. Neal is inconsistent as a receiver. I want to see him develop as more of a 3-down back this year to help him project more as an all-around runner in the NFL. But nonetheless, this is one of the most dynamic players in college football, and I'm expecting a big year for Devin Neal, and I think this is somebody who, if things go right, could absolutely run for the Heisman Award. Obviously, both of these guys are seniors. We're only going to have them for 1 year, and we've got to look at who we have behind them. I like to run a running back by committee, and while Devin Neal will obviously be the main guy here, I think we're going to see a lot of Savion Morrison, number 28, and Daniel Highshaw Jr., number 20. Both of them are juniors, and both of them will likely lead the backfield next year. Once they're gone, some names to watch include freshman Johnny Thompson Jr. and Harry Stewart III, who comes in with 93 speed. As for the quarterback position, behind Daniels, the backup this year will likely be junior Ben Easters, although the name to watch for the long term will certainly be 3-star freshman Isaiah Marshall from Southfield, Michigan. Marshall absolutely has an opportunity to be the long-term starting quarterback of the Jayhawks once Jalen Daniels is gone. Marshall is a really intriguing skill set, and while we certainly will explore adding another quarterback through high school recruiting or the transfer portal, Marshall at the very least will get to compete to be the long-term quarterback here. He's got a pretty strong arm, he's decently accurate, we just need to get him to be more consistent, which, considering he's a true freshman, is very understandable. Marshall will be redshirted this year, meaning we can play him in at most 4 games. I'm going to look to get him some reps, particularly in blowouts, to see if this is a guy who could be ready to be the starting quarterback next year or in the future. Let's take a look at the pass catchers now, and as I mentioned, pretty much all seniors here. The top receiver on the roster is Lawrence Arnold. Fitting that we play in Lawrence, Kansas. Arnold is 6'3", 200 pounds. He's got a good mix of size, speed, and athleticism. I think he's got pretty good hands and projects to be the leading receiver for our team this year. Behind him, we've got Luke Grimm. 6 foot, 195. I think he's going to get a lot of his snaps in the slot. He's a good route runner, sneaky athlete, gritty, tough, blue-collar type of mentality. And then Quentin Skinner is going to be our deep threat. This is somebody who is a burner on the outside. 6'5", 195. I think he's got solid physicality. I'd love to see him use a little bit more of his play strength and possibly get a little bit bigger to become an overall more well-rounded player. Seniors Trevor Wilson and Doug Emilian will be our key backups and likely have big roles on special teams. And then freshman Keaton Kubeka, I'm going to look to get him on the field, being that he is the only receiver here who will be on the roster next year. At tight end, the starter will be senior Jared Casey, who is most well known for his game-winning touchdown a few years ago against Texas, the play that I feel like single-handedly turned the momentum of this Kansas program, and obviously, that is capitalized over the last couple of years. Behind him, we've got a solid group, again, of seniors. Hopefully one of Jaden Ham or true freshman Carson Brunn could very well be the long-term starter. I think the offensive line is one of the bigger strengths of this team. We've got a number of juniors starting on the line, so we're not going to have to replace everybody right away. Only 2 starters on the line are currently seniors. The player I'm most intrigued by is certainly left tackle Logan Brown, a former 5-star high school recruit, originally went to Wisconsin. Things didn't really work out there, but I'm confident they will here at Kansas. At 6'6", 315 pounds, Brown has legit NFL athleticism, size, and length. It's really just about the consistency with him. IQ, footwork, that has to get better. But otherwise, he's an impressive natural talent. He has the elite development trait, which is the highest dev trait in the game. He's the only player on our roster with the elite development trait. So because of that, I'm confident that he's going to get a lot better over the next couple of years. Behind Brown, we've got a few players who I think could start in the future as well. Redshirt freshmen Calvin Clements and James Livingston will eventually likely compete to be the long-term left tackle. On the right side, one of our 2 seniors on the line is Bryce Cabledew. He's a pretty solid player, also 6'6", 315 pounds. And behind him, look out for the development of David Abijan, a true freshman who hopefully will be the long-term replacement. The only other senior who is a starter on the offensive line is left guard Michael Ford Jr. He's the highest rated player on the offensive line, really good pass protector, and somebody who I think will be good enough to eventually play in the NFL. Behind him, hopefully one of these true freshmen, Alex Ball or Harrison Utley, can develop. They'll be redshirted this year and hopefully pretty good in the future. At right guard, Kobe Baines, the redshirt junior from Jacksonville, Florida, is the lowest rated starter on the offensive line, but he's not a bad player by any stretch. Behind him, maybe a guy like Amir Herring can develop, but he's already a redshirt sophomore, so I'm not entirely sure if we've got our long-term replacement for Kobe Baines on the roster. At center, junior Bryce Foster is one of the better players on the team, coming in as an 81 overall. He's got star development, 6'5", 330 pounds. This is a powerful offensive lineman. He will deck you in the run game, and I would like to see him improve in the pass game, but if he does, I think he could be quite good. Behind him, we have a good backup in Shane Bumgardner, but only upperclassmen. So, in other words, we best be recruiting a center in the near future. Overall, the offense is really fun. We've got a dynamic backfield, we've got good receivers, and a strong offensive line. The offense is easily the strength of the team this year, but we've got a lot of holes in the long term on that side of the ball. Now, if Kansas wants to seriously contend for a spot in the college football playoff, they're going to need to have a big season defensively. We'll start in the secondary. I think our biggest strength on this defense is certainly the back end, particularly the corners. Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson very well might be the best cornerback duo in America. We'll start with Bryant, who comes in as a 90 overall. This is somebody who I think really has a chance to be a high draft pick in the NFL, and possibly somebody who ends up playing on Sundays for a long time. At 6 foot, 170 pounds, I think Bryant's got pretty good size and length. I'd love to see him add some strength and physicality, and if he does, I think he'll become a very complete player. This is somebody who really doesn't have any holes in his game in a coverage perspective. He is elite in zone coverage, very good in man coverage, and he's got excellent ball skills. This is a dynamic playmaker who can force a turnover anytime the ball is thrown his way. If he just gets a little bit bigger and improves his physicality, there's no reason why he won't be one of the most successful corners currently at the collegiate level, not just this year, but eventually in the NFL. Now, Batman needs his Robin, and calling Mello Dotson Robin might not do justice to how good of a player he is himself. At 6'1", 190, I think Dotson is the more physical at the two corners. I think he's going to be a little bit better in man coverage than Kobe Bryant is, and because of that, he'll be matched up with the bigger, more physical receivers. He's not quite as good in zone, and while he has very strong ball skills, they're not necessarily elite like what Kobe Bryant has. But I think depending on the season that Dotson has, he very well could be a high pick himself, maybe even higher than Kobe Bryant at the next level. As for the starters in the back end, I think we're going to see both senior O.J. Burrows and junior Devin Dye play a lot. Burrows is your more versatile player, probably a little bit better in the run game, and he can play at a few different spots. Dye, I think, is your more traditional center field cover safety, but nonetheless, they're both going to be on the field a lot. At strong safety, Marvin Grant, the senior, is an 87 overall, one of the more underrated players on the defense. He's fast, he's quick, he's big, really good run defender. Would love to see him improve as a cover player, though. In terms of young guys at safety, Taylor Davis is going to be a name to watch. Damani Maxson, the true freshman, is somebody who I think has a chance to play quite a bit this year. He will be on the field early and often this season, and we'll have to figure out after the first few games if he's a guy we want to redshirt, or if he's just too good to keep off of the field. In terms of the depth at corner, one of the most intriguing players on the roster for me is sophomore Caleb Purdy. He will be our main slot corner, and I wouldn't be surprised if he stays in the slot even once Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson are gone. I don't think he necessarily has the size, length, and physicality to match up with some of the bigger receivers, but I think in the slot, he's going to be suited best. Who could be some of the long-term starters on the outside? Two names to watch out for me are Brian Dilworth and Jalen Todd. Dilworth, number 22, is a redshirt sophomore, and Todd, number 28, is a true freshman from Southfield, Michigan, high school teammates with one of our other freshmen in Isaiah Marshall. Let's move over to the linebacker spot. It's an older group here, so we're going to have to recruit linebackers pretty heavily. The man in the middle for the most part this year will be senior Cornell Wheeler. Wheeler's a guy who I think is pretty smart, pretty instinctive. He's not a freak athlete per se, and he's not some elite run defender, but I trust him as one of the captains of the defense with the green dot. I think Tywan Berryhill Jr. is a guy who's going to play a lot as well, particularly in sub packages. He's a really good cover player, really athletic, another guy who's going to be one of our defensive captains. J.B. Brown is going to be an early down player, somebody who's on the field a lot on first and second down, while Jason Gilliam is more of your cover linebacker, really athletic, really fluid mover, and somebody who I think is hopefully going to match up well with tight ends and slot receivers. I wouldn't say there's much youth in the linebacker room. Guys like Brian Helena and Logan Brantley might give us something to look forward to, but linebacker is certainly going to be a position of priority in terms of recruiting and the transfer portal over these next couple of years. I do really like where the defensive line is at. We're mostly a senior-driven group in terms of the starters, but we've got a lot of young guys who I think very well could be impact players down the line. Jeremy Robinson projects to be the top pass rusher here in year number 1. This is somebody who wins with power, but I think he's got pretty good athleticism as well, and somebody who hopefully has a chance at leading the team in sacks. At right end, we're likely going to be seeing a split between junior Dylan Brooks and senior Dylan Woodkey, a transfer from Youngstown State. Both of these guys are going to play quite a bit, and similar to running back, I like to rotate my pass rushers in and out. As for defensive tackle, we run a 4-3, meaning that two of these guys are probably going to be on the field at a time. We've got a few differing skill sets. Javier Derrett is a senior. He will likely be on the field the most of this group. I think he's a pretty good run defender. He's also a solid pass rusher. He wins with finesse and quickness. Behind him, DJ Withers and Caleb Taylor are two guys who win with power. I think they're going to be on the field quite a lot. In terms of our depth, we've got some intriguing young players. Sophomore Darius Ballantyne and freshman Roland Haynes will challenge to be long-term pieces. But the defensive lineman on the roster I'm most excited about is four-star true freshman Dakius Brinkley. He's a freak athlete who has a long ways to go in terms of refining his pass rush toolbox, but I think he's got a lot of upside. He's going to play a lot early, and I'm going to figure out if he's a guy who I want to redshirt or if he's too good to keep off the field and somebody who I want playing this year. As for defensive tackle, we don't have a ton of youth per se. Keenan Caldwell and Tommy Dunn Jr. should give us some solid reps here and there. The only underclassman of this group is redshirt freshman Marcus Calvin. We're going to look to develop him to possibly become a long-term starter. And then for the special teams, Owen Piper-Gerdes will be the kicker. He is a 63 overall junior. And Damon Greaves will likely be the punter with Graylin Addison as the backup. So that is your Season 1 roster for the Kansas Jayhawks. Again, it's a really fun team. We've got some intriguing players on both sides of the ball, but we've got a lot of long-term holes with a very large group of seniors leaving us after this year. So we're going to have to utilize recruiting and the transfer portal in order to keep this team at the top of the conference. As for custom schedules, we're definitely going to have fun with this in this series. Now, for this season, I wanted to keep things realistic and use the real-life schedule. I did make one change, though. Kansas is playing an FCS team in Week 1, and I wanted to play against a real team here. So I chose Middle Tennessee State. If you know, you know. Other than that, the schedule is the same that it is in real life. Our other two non-conference opponents will be Illinois on the road in Week 2, followed by UNLV in Week 3, and that'll bring us into Big 12 play. I think our in-conference schedule this year is actually very favorable. Of the other 4 ranked opponents in our conference, we're only going to have to play against one of them in the regular season. I'm fascinated to see all of the new teams in the conference: Arizona, Arizona State, BYU, Houston, Colorado, Cincinnati, and UCF. And as I mentioned earlier, we may very well add some more. In terms of the top teams in the conference, Utah is going to be one to watch with senior quarterback Cam Rising. Oklahoma State has a ton of talent on both sides of the ball, particularly running back Ollie Gordon II. Arizona, another one of the newer teams in this conference. They have arguably the best quarterback in the Big 12 with Noah Fifita, along with multiple other highly regarded players and possible first-rounders with Davis at corner and McMillan at wide receiver. Our main rival in this series will be the Kansas State Wildcats in the Sunflower Showdown. The Wildcats are our only ranked opponent as of now. We will see them Week 9 on the road. They're led by sophomore quarterback Avery Johnson, who is expected to be the starter here over the next couple of years, and they've got some good skill position players around him. Running back DJ Giddens is one of the better backs in the conference, and Colorado transfer Dylan Edwards made waves last year with some big performances early in the season. Kansas State is not the only rival that we're going to follow along with. Kansas' other main rival in this series will be the Missouri Tigers. Before Missouri moved to the SEC, these two teams played against each other every year in the Border War. But with Missouri switching conferences, the rivalry has died out a little bit. So because of that, I'm going to bring the rivalry back. We're going to play Missouri a lot in this series starting next season. That means we won't see senior quarterback Brady Cook. Instead, it will likely be Sam Horn. But Missouri's got a number of good players who will likely still be on the roster in that game. We'll see if junior wide receiver Luther Burden III declares for the draft, where he'll likely be a first-rounder, or if he sticks around for one more year. So here's the rest of our schedule. We've got West Virginia, TCU, and Arizona State. 3 teams projected to finish towards the bottom of the conference, but it gets a little bit harder. Houston should be a fun team with quarterback Donovan Smith. Then, of course, we've got Kansas State on the road, our biggest game of the year, the best team we play this year, and obviously our biggest rival. Iowa State and BYU are always competitive. Then we've got Colorado, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter for Senior Day, followed by Baylor at the end of the season. Before we wrap things up, I do want to preview recruiting a little bit and get ourselves familiarized with some of the players who could be our recruiting targets here this season. I wanted to pick out players who were interested in our school. I wanted to pick out players who don't seem like they really know where they want to go. That way we can sway them a little bit easier. And obviously, I want guys who I think are going to make an impact for our football team, particularly at positions of need such as quarterback and wide receiver. I also want to focus on local recruiting, particularly within the state of Kansas. I want to dominate in-state recruiting over the Wildcats. So, for instance, a guy like Jazir Tolbert, this athlete who's a top 200 player in the country and has Kansas State first on his list, is definitely going to be the guy who we look to prioritize. As you can imagine, it will certainly be challenging bringing in some of the top talents across the nation. We're not going to go after many 5-stars, including this white corner in the top 3. This might be our Jackie Robinson. But I don't think we're going to target many, if any, of the 5-star players. We might get a few 4-stars, but I think the 3-stars, guys ranked between, say, the 400th and the 1,000th ranked recruit in the country, I think those are going to be the types of guys we look at. Maybe some players higher, such as Jazir Tolbert, the athlete from the state of Kansas, who I talked about earlier. In terms of how we're going to use our first set of points, we're going to have it so where we can scout quarterbacks quicker because, as I said, we're going to put a lot of quarterbacks on the board. So I've made my initial list of 35 players. I think this list is going to change a lot very quickly as we figure out which players are good and which players are interested in coming to our school. Clyde Poole is the only player in America who has us as his first choice. He's an in-state kid. He's a 3-star athlete, and he plays quarterback. We are going to scout him all the way, and he looks like a freak. 96 speed, 93 throw power. He's probably a little bit raw otherwise, but he's got the physical intangibles to be really good. Jay Pitts is a 4-star. He has us on his list, but he's a bust, unfortunately, so he's probably not a player we're going to prioritize a whole lot. I think Clyde Poole is definitely the better prospect. We added some other 4-stars here. They aren't necessarily interested in our school, but I figured it was worth a shot. Shakir Noel looks pretty solid. I would argue Poole might be a little bit better, though, so it's probably going to be more worth it to still focus on him. But I'll still give Noel a scholarship and see if we have any chance of entering this race. It's unlikely, but it's worth a shot. Bryce Berzinger is also a bust. I don't think his ratings look that bad, though. George Shembo is a 4-star athlete. He looks really good. 92 throw power, 91 speed. I think he's the best player we've scouted so far. He's going to be hard to get, but it's worth a look. And then Darian Thrasher looks pretty solid as well. Another guy who's quite fast, 97 speed, and he's got a good arm as well. As for Jazir Tolbert, this is the in-state athlete. Kansas State is the number 1 on his list. He looks like a power back, and I think his ratings across the board look pretty good. Running back is not a huge immediate need, but he's definitely going to be a guy who's towards the top of our list. As for some of these wide receivers, these two guys, Pepper and Brink, we can't look at them now because of a deal breaker. Now, if we take receivers off the board, that deal breaker grade will go up. So we're going to scout some of these other receivers, take a couple of them off the list. That way we can look at a guy like Sheldon Brink or Dorian Pepper. Cameron Wigman, for instance, as you can see here, is a 3-star, and he is a bust. So this is somebody who we're going to take off the board. That way Pepper and Brink are more likely going to want to come here. Philip Olawale seems like he has no clue where he wants to go, which is good for us. We're going to have a chance to pitch him early, I think, and hopefully look to recruit him immediately. We're going to offer him a scholarship. I think he looks like a pretty good player. I added some 4-star receivers. Trent Aurora, he is a gem, meaning he is a 5-star talent. It's going to be really hard to get him, but given how good he is, it's worth a shot. This is a guy who could probably play for us as a true freshman. Mario Maddox is a JUCO player, and he also looks like a beast. Another gem. It's going to be harder to get him, but another player who very well could be our top receiver going into next year if he were to commit. So I did this for every position. I found some more gems, including tight end Isaiah Lamore. All 3 of the defensive ends on the list are gems. 4-star Seth Jennings, 3-star Ben Bieria, and 4-star Angel Logan. All 3 of these guys have interest in our school, so hopefully we can get 1 or 2 of these pass rushers and really build up a good defensive line over the next couple of years because all 3 of these players look fantastic. Certainly guys who I plan on prioritizing. Another gem I found was this athlete, Mo Nwokeji. He's probably a linebacker. Vilamani Manupuna at corner looks really good. So from there, I took some guys off the board, and now we can scout these receivers. Brink and Pepper are both very interested in our school. Dorian Pepper in particular, we are 3rd for him, and there's not a lot of big schools going after him, so I think we have a good chance of landing him. He looks like a pretty good player and definitely will be worth a scholarship. As for Sheldon Brink, he's a little bit bigger. I think he's a little bit more athletic than Pepper, but might not be as polished as a receiver. But he's a gem. So he's another guy who I think we're certainly going to have our eyes on and certainly be one of our top targets. I ended up offering 21 scholarships in this first stage, with JUCO linebacker Channing Wilbur getting the last one. But as we take players off the board, that scholarship will be taken away. So it's kind of as if we have unlimited scholarships, at least at the start. And we're obviously going to have to be more strategic with which players are on the board as we go along through the season. So that'll wrap up the episode. Next time around, we've got week 1 against Middle Tennessee State. We're going to go through weeks 0 and 1 across college football, and we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting as well. Should be a fun one. Hope you guys enjoyed this one and are ready for episode 2. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out. Rock Chalk.